All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our popular Sage 100 Automation webinar series. I'm Mike Guglielmo, one of your customer account managers for the Northeast region of the U.S. Today, we're especially pleased to host one of our best partners, Centage or Budget Maestro. Budget Maestro is the leading industry in redefining budget automation, everything from budgeting, forecasting, reporting, and analysis. We also have the chance to see the solution in action and a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please type any questions in the chat box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar sidebar and then hit the send to staff at any time during the webinar. The webinar will also be recorded and distributed after the presentation for your convenience. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our two presenters today. First, we have David Winterhalter, the Vice President of Marketing, and Lee Sharkey, who's our Senior Solutions Engineer. Guys, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks, Mike. We're excited to be a partner with SWK and really appreciate the opportunity to introduce our solution to your clients. Lee, if you could advance the slide. Actually, next slide, sorry. So Centage has been in business for more than 15 years, and in that time we've worked with thousands of customers across a wide range of industries, build and deploy solutions for budgeting, forecasting, planning, and reporting. Next slide. I'm sure we need to remind our audience that today's finance leaders have a very challenging job. You're expected to deliver on demand a consolidated forecast and a complete picture of the financial health of your business to all your stakeholders, and to do that in real time to essentially empower your organization to spot opportunities and risks. Lee, next slide. And the reason it's so challenging from what we hear when we start working with clients is the data they have is really siloed inside the organization. It might be in spreadsheets that are scattered across different departments and in different systems that help speed your plan. Building a comprehensive plan once or twice a year, that's a monstrous task in and of itself. And if that's not hard enough, you want to have the flexibility and agility to make changes to the fly in these plans to run forecasts and scenarios. It becomes nearly impossible in today's world with the tools and technologies previously available. Not only Excel, but traditional budgeting solutions and the approaches that they've taken to custom build systems and to link them across organization are now obsolete. They can also be littered with inaccuracies, data errors, and potentially information that's out of sync. Lee, next slide. We'd like to share with you a modern approach to budgeting and forecasting. Budgeting redefined as we see it starts by making the budgeting model easy to build, easy to change, easy to collaborate, and then easy to act when you discover opportunities or issues. Budget Maestro features built-in rules of business logic that are reusable, so the budget model actually programs itself and maintains itself when and how you want to change it. This logic is what really sets Budget Maestro apart from any solution in the market and enables end users to do no programming, maintain no links, or to have to worry about whether they're breaking the budget model. Our philosophy is that we've taken everything that can be hard about the budgeting and planning process and made it easy. Our goal is to help you automatically deliver that complete picture of your financial health, clearly communicate the results and potential risks, and quickly propose intelligent action plans. Lee, next slide. My colleague Lee will demonstrate for you in just a few moments how our solution will help you easily connect, sync, and model with your Sage General Ledger, leverage that pre-programmed GAAP-compliant business rules and logic that I just mentioned to build and develop your budgets and plans, and allow more budgeting owners and contributors to participate in the overall planning process. This logic will help you build a completely flexible model architected for change in as little as a few weeks. You'll see how you can empower your organization with powerful real-time reports that can be scheduled and filtered based on departments or functions. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague Lee, who's going to give you an overview of how Budget Maestro works.
Great, thanks, David. Okay, so let me just bring up my screen here. Okay, great. So thanks for joining today. As David mentioned, really just wanted to take you into the tool, let you see what we do, how we do it, and hopefully let you conceptualize how you might be able to make efficiencies and really use the tool going. Today I'm going to show you kind of a very generic overview and kind of demonstrate the functionality here. There is obviously other functionality that we can get into at a later time or whatever. I'm just giving you a broad overview of how the functions itself. I've actually set off the different parts of the budget planning process. So I'm not just lumping personnel information in amongst expenses. We have different tiles on the screen here. And what that allows us to do is client by client, user by user, you can really design and customize the experience as you go through here. What this also means is on day one, some clients may come in, they may choose to activate certain features, and as the process and the organization itself expands, the tool is able to go forward with them, allowing them just to scale at any particular time. So there is no programming inside our tool that you're going to see. There's no impact that folks are having to learn. It really is designed that folks are able to just activate and deactivate different parts as they. This is more of a main sort of financial controller of the system. A user coming into the tool, as mentioned, obviously the way the tool's been designed here. If we come into another instance here, a user themselves might have it set up where they only see personnel information. They might just see the option to enter into expenses, or vice versa. They may just have it where they have access to revenue and don't see any other tiles here. Now, aligned with each organization over here on the left-hand side, you can see a sample sort of overview of an organizational structure. Each division or each department, etc., can be created, and this is drag and drop here, where we can have different levels of consolidation, rolling up to different companies, and eventually rolling up to the different or the whole organization in general. This is actually drag and drop, and each organization themselves can rename different consolidation levels. They can run reports at this level, roll up different departments, and create as many levels of consolidation as they like. In addition to this, we don't just hold you to one particular view. So if users or the organization wants to see things from a different perspective, perhaps based on a location view or based on the manager that's approving things, you can roll this up accordingly. And again, not limiting it to just one organizational structure or one level of reporting. So once the users have been set up and the organizational structure's in there, we tend to begin, obviously, at this point, enforcing the chart of accounts, bringing in the different segments, aligning the tool with the different parts of the general ledger string. The last part there really is to start bringing in historic information. The tool itself goes out a consolidated 60 years, meaning that folks can bring in, let's say, 10 years worth of history, and then allowing them to budget up to 50 years in advance. Best practice, we see folks bring anywhere between 2 to 3 years, perhaps even 5 years of history, and allowing folks obviously to run reports, whether it be variance reports, look at trends. And the other reason that we see folks bring in historic information is due to the fact that this quick start wizard allows them to very, very quickly create baseline budgets. So although the tool does accommodate zero-based budgeting, this quick start wizard allows them to point being for this wizard is after they've made their selections, they'll click run, and everything will roll out across the organization in just a couple of seconds. So today I'm going to go through this administration department just to demonstrate some of the functionality in terms of building up a budget and the process place. If we come into operating expenses here, you can see here a list of the different expenses. Here's the department that we've selected. Here's the general ledger account. And here's the naming convention behind the general ledger accounts as well. So the tool can be as simple as having users coming into a screen like this, plugging in monthly numbers here, overriding some of the values that have been preset in this instance. And anytime they make a change to a monthly value, the totals on the right-hand side will update. And then likewise as well, the period totals aligned with the user's fiscal year will update across the top as well, and a total for the whole department in the top right-hand corner. So monthly budgeting is simple and similar to Excel, where they're not having to go through a huge learning curve. We generally don't see a high level of user adoption and learning taking place there. We also see that folks come in here, and instead of plugging in a monthly number, they can come in and enter in an annual amount, and everything just updates accordingly across the year. Now, right now it's updating just because we've spread this particular line here for the $6,000 evenly. Again, being a pre-built solution, what they're able to do here is have some default options here where instead of spreading things evenly, they might want to spread it based on the number of days and fiscal periods, spread it quarterly end, and the users and clients might come in and even customize this with different seasonality, etc. Again, just allowing for folks to come in, choose from the drop-down menu, and everything updates accordingly. Now, as they're budgeting in here and as they're going through things line by line, you can see here this travel line, it's $9,000, and we're spreading it evenly. There's also a section at the bottom here called the benchmark section. And if we bring this up here, you can see that this benchmark section actually allows us to see what we're budgeting today, the $9,000, and compare that against maybe actuals or budgets or forecasts from prior years. So as they're working here, they can get an understanding what did the actuals come in at last year. You can see the totals over here were $10,500 that came in the actuals, and then month by month they'll be able to see variances as well. So they can actually copy this information, drive that to the budget if they perhaps want to come in and maybe say we're going to take the actuals, maybe even put a quick percent increase in here of let's say 10%, and this line for travel now updates for the same 10% increase year over year, and that same spike in March based on how the actuals came in. So obviously some more functionality here, but one of the big parts here for us is also the way that we handle calculations. So I want to focus on this office rental line for just a second, and you can see the office rental line is $80,000 a month, $960,000 for the year. Now we're a little bit unique in how we handle our calculations, and again we go with that philosophy that you're not having to learn new syntax or new coding. So within our tool here, although we have the benchmark where folks can compare year-over-year variances, we also have this details section on the bottom left-hand corner. And what the details section does is it allows us to see a little bit more information. And in this particular case for office rental, we're actually looking at square footage, which is 40,000 square feet in this department, and we're multiplying this by a rate per square foot, which is $2. That's a standard rate for this particular organization. So the $80,000 here, in terms of the way that we built up this calculation, what we're doing here is we have a whole drivers section where different clients can bring in lookup tables, non-financial accounts, metrics, rates, statistics. They're able to bring that information into the tool. They can control who has access to edit values. So if particular users don't have access to maybe enter in and override the contract amount here, then that can be locked down. But more importantly, when anyone's creating a calculation inside our tool, basically they're coming in, they're choosing from a drop-down list of those drivers, where they're choosing square footage in this case. They'll then choose multiply from the drop-down menu, and then they'll choose rate per square foot in order to select the rate per square foot here. So again, trying to simplify the process for users, not having them learn that new code, not having even to be Excel gurus where they know the function bar in there. Basically allowing them to select from that drop-down list. More importantly, though, for any finance users coming in, maybe they're approving this budget or 6 months down the line, how do we come up with that value? They're not having to trace through 5 different spreadsheets where cell D2 is a VLOOKUP, a cell C3 or whatever. Try to make things really transparent in terms of the way that calculations are flowing through. Now, while we have this details section here up and available, I just want to focus on one last piece here. So the assumptions on the calculation are flowing, and you can see here, and here you can see that we're actually debiting this expense account here for the $80,000 a month that we came up with. Now, again, unique to this whole industry, our tool doesn't look at things as just totals. What we do is we have debit and credit logic behind the scenes. So our pre-built nature doesn't just mean the interface that's in front of you, it's the way that we handle the financials in general. So by handling things with debit and credit logic, what we're able to do is basically use dual journal entry logic just to automate and integrate balance sheet and cash flow. Right now, you can see that eventually we're hitting cash in 60 days for this particular line item. Each line item behind the scenes is automatically populating without the users having to think about it or even think about the information. But from a finance perspective, they're getting these automated reports, and they're obviously able to tailor this again with drop-down menus if they wanted to change this from 60 days and maybe accrue the expense or pay it cash, whatever it might be, and they can customize the methods there too. And the last thing I want to touch on this page, if we bring back up this assumptions, is although we're looking at things from a 12-month perspective here, and just looking at this 2019 value here, if we wanted to go forward, as I mentioned, the tool's automatically rolling out a total of 60 years. So if we wanted to move forward into year 2, year 3, year 5, year 10, whatever it might be. The tool is automatically rolling out. And what this provides is the ability for folks that are providing multi-year projections to perhaps boards or whatever. They're able to do that at a very granular level, whether it be in this part of the tool here, or whether they want to do this from a higher level and do it from the advanced reporting side that you'll see as we go through the demonstration today. So this is the expense side of things. Obviously from here, we talk about things like revenue. From the revenue section here, you see a very similar screen. It could be as simple as plugging in numbers here and putting in values where you can see obviously calculations flow through in this particular instance. Underneath here, you can see the calculation making up this revenue line as we're looking at the number of products that we're selling a month, perhaps the number of widgets, multiplying it by the price of a widget. And then for folks that are even factoring in things like cost, you can see the standard cost down in here and everything flowing through margins, the P&L, and eventually down to the receivables as well. So a lot of this is just happening again, just by making the selections here. Folks can enter in the number of widgets and override these values. They can also calculate these values as well, particularly the cost if it's being made up of material, labor, overhead, or again, just switch this off if they're not even looking at different costs in the organization. So the revenue piece, the one other piece that I will mention on this screen as well is, as much as you can see, this is actually the same department, the same revenue account here. And here you can see we've got multiple lines making up those revenue accounts below the general ledger. This is available on the expense side as well, where we don't force folks just to budget to one revenue account. They can obviously provide additional details below that general ledger as well. Moving over to personnel, obviously the biggest expense in the majority of organizations that we work with here. You can see here an example of 3 individuals that we have inside the tool here. So bringing over the information across into our tool from whether they have a HR system or whether they're even doing this in Excel, they can bring that information into our tool for recording things. And again, you can see a handful of columns available, which obviously we go beyond here. But typical things are job titles, departments folks are working in, start dates, end dates, employee type, hourly wages. We also offer salaried as well, headcount that folks account for, and things like descriptions that folks are required to put in notes. This field is available on all the different pages that we've gone through. And then the related expenses, which are all those benefits and taxes applied to each individual. And then lastly, I've highlighted this column here for allocations, which obviously if folks are being allocated across the organization, they'll be able to set that up inside the tool as well. To give an understanding what's happening here is obviously, again, you're making your assumptions at the top here, where we have this to be hired VP of Finance. You can see the start date for this individual right now. We're beginning to start them on the 22nd of February. And by making the selection up here, everything else is rolling through and calculating automatically down below. So underneath here, you can see there's no expense in January because we didn't start them to the 22nd of February. In here, you can see adjusted gross wages or gross wages here prorated, where here you can see that everything flowing through everywhere forward from there. So the calculations taking place. And more importantly here, you can see the FICA, the FUTA, the SUTA, where this person or this individual is going to cap out in July based on the caps and rates that have been built into the system as well. So all the caps and rates are available there. Folks can get more granular than this. So instead of saying health insurance, they may want to break this down even further into single plus one, family plan, etc. The point being there as well is not just having caps, rates, and values, but also things like 401k. They can set up their HR standards where perhaps no individual becomes available for 401k until after 6 months of employment. So eligibility terms also built in, and obviously the ability to accommodate this across the globe as well with different tax benefits and rates across there too. I will also throw out the sort of side note there as well that we do have a lot of clients that come to us here. They don't want to budget by individuals. They just want to budget for groups of employees. So obviously we accommodate that as well, where they could just budget 10 interns and pay them $20 an hour, etc. So allowing for grouping of employee budgeting, and then likewise as well, folks that want to continue with maybe a fringe percentage rate or a burden percentage rate, depending on terminology there, they can come in and they can obviously use calculation method just to set up those fringe rates and step into this level of granularity against taxes. Lastly, from a sort of process side in terms of gathering the data, we'll go into the capital assets section here. Still here, you can see that we're focused on the administration department. You can see we have some existing items in here, and then likewise, we have some to-be acquired laptops. Now, again, very much like the rest of the, in particular, that headcount plays a big. You can see the items like this year. The price of a laptop's $1,000. Here's the start date, the in-service date. In terms of depreciation methods and schedules, obviously we have straight line, double declining. All the makers tables are pre-built. We also allow folks to customize depreciation if they want to take that a step further and set out the different terms there as well. And likewise, again, with other columns available, but things like the ability to put in descriptions for each asset item, and then likewise allocate the asset across the organization as well. But again, similar to before, putting in the information, you can see it flowing through where everything's calculating down below. 5 laptops here, $1,000 a piece. Here you can see the net asset value, depreciation kicking in on the P&L here when we placed it in service in March. And then in this instance here, although we have some hidden columns here, we're actually disposing of the asset here in August. And the reason for that is just to kind of highlight how everything's moving through with the different debits and credits through the balance sheet and eventually hitting cash accounts. So from here, we do obviously have the ability to forecast inside, not just budget. Forecasting will be a similar process where instead of seeing 12 months of information where they can come in and enter values, the first 3 months, if we're doing a Q1 forecast, might be populated with actuals and the ability for folks to make course corrections for the remaining months. And we also offer scenario planning as well, where folks are able to come into the tool. They'll be able to take in a copy of the original budget, call it whatever they like. In this case, we'll just call it very quick a best case scenario and assumptions around those things. So whether they want to say the different drivers, whether it be those metrics, this rate per square foot goes from $2 to $3, or whether things like the revenue line, whether they want to give personnel a 2% raise or certain individuals a 4% raise, they can make their assumptions in here. In this case, we'll just choose operating expenses and make the assumption that expenses are going to go up monthly, perhaps rather than being a standard value, say the expenses are going to increase by 5%. In fact, I called this a best case scenario, so we'll say the expenses are going to go down by 5%. And then underneath here, they can actually select which expenses those actually are, whether they're all expenses, or perhaps it's just a mailing account here that's going to decrease by that 5%. They can make the selections there. And then obviously once they've made the selections, they can add different items to that environment or that assumption. Revenue may increase, some other information may change. But the minute they click on finish, they now have a new version of the budget where they now have this best case scenario. So what we've actually done there is we've kept the integrity of the original budget, all the calculations, the notes, the files that are linked to lines, etc. All that information is flown through into the best case scenario. And then coming back into things here, when we have the expenses, this is what we originally budgeted inside this plan basis, the 1.024 number. Whereas if we come across into this best case scenario, you can see that drop by the 5% given the assumption that we made. So folks can create up to 1,100 different versions at any one given time inside our tool. They can also control who has access to those different versions. So if there's maybe sensitive data where an organization is thinking of outsourcing part of the organization, whatever, they can control who has access to see that sensitive data. The last part here is really moving through into reporting. So all the information we've entered, the different scenarios, a reporting section here allows folks to run reports on the fly. They can compare 2 versions together or up to 4 versions together if they want to compare the budget they created to actuals or best cases and look at the variance amounts and variance percentages. But the way that our tool runs reports is if we just run a report quickly here, you can see it'll build in a couple of seconds, and now we have the report run. So they can see the raw data here. They can see obviously whether they want to look at things period by period or switch it. Perhaps they want to see things quarter by quarter. They can make some selections here. And then underneath here, they can also allow for them to drill in a little bit further. See here that we've put some security around revenue, allowing folks to put security and not allow folks to drill down any further. Whereas for things like expenses, folks may want to keep continuing down and eventually see the general ledger information month by month here as well. These reports can be exported to Excel. They can also be printed to hard copy or PDF as well. And again, not just P&Ls, cash flow, other reports as well are going to come out of this part of the tool too. Now, the last part of the tool that I just wanted to take you over to is our advanced reporting side of the tool. And what this does, again, is kind of continue with the same theme, the same philosophy as we've built the rest of the tool, where no individual's having to go out and spend a lot of time learning that new syntax, learning that new programming language in order to design their own dashboards and reports. So for that reason, when the majority of our clients are generally coming from Excel, what we've done is we've taken the information and structured Maestro, pushed it through a SQL analysis cube, and then we've provided this add-in to the ribbon here for Analytics Maestro, allowing for folks to bring the data into Excel. But although this isn't Excel, allowing folks to put on their own logos on their dashboards, design whatever charts and graphs, just leveraging the part of Excel, eliminating all those headaches behind consolidation, formulas, etc., etc. So in terms of the data coming through here, it is all structured inside Budget Maestro. Folks have entered the information. At that point, Budget Maestro knows the actuals, the budget. It understands revenue accounts, cash accounts, expense accounts, monthly, yearly data. So depending on which dashboard that folks want to create, if we come across to this dashboard here, you can see here that we're looking at budget, actuals, and then we have a variance amount here as well. Now again, the charts and graphs are just holding on to the information that's coming from Budget Maestro, but the information from Budget Maestro is just flat data. There is no formulas here, as you can see in the top of the bar here. Even if we just actually deleted this, you can see that some of the charts and graphs update. In fact, I'll delete another handful here. If we delete more than those, you can see the charts and graphs change there. Anytime anything does change or someone does that by mistake, you can't break these reports. You simply come to refresh the sheet, and it's pulling back the straight figures back from Budget Maestro again. But further to this, although we're just seeing data here, you can see here that we've got all departments. And if folks wanted to maybe click here, see things from another part of the organization, by double clicking here, you can now see that we've got some different views based on the information on how things are structured. So if I wanted to see a different part of the organization, maybe that consolidated level of operations that we demonstrated at the beginning of this presentation, run for any one of these levels. And as soon as they make the selection, the whole report updates, and again, updates with the raw information without the formulas coming through here. So again, just double clicking, choosing which part of the organization they want to see, and everything just updates. So with that structure coming through, not just different departments, if folks want to come in and design different reports, slice and dice information, you can see here we're looking at 2018. They can choose which year they want to see here, which department, which version they want to see, budget, best case, actuals. And here you can see we've got period 1 through 3 inside Q1 that we're looking at right now. Folks have the ability to zoom out on information, or you can see now we're taking it back to the full year. Or again, double click where we're seeing 4 quarters, and perhaps drill into Q3 this time, where you're now seeing periods 7, 8, and 9. So again, all slicing and dicing, analysis done here. We'll be able to see history inside the tool, budget to actuals year over year, identify trends, link charts and graphs, logos, etc. Look at things from different parts of the organization, whether it be departments, projects, etc., etc. And then given the fact that folks are in Excel, if there is a particular KPI that they're not monitoring inside the tool and they want to see some sort of calculation, they're generally still familiar enough where they can run any sort of part of the Excel that they wanted to, building out different calculations or whatever it might be. The last report I just want to show very, very quickly here is just this monthly forecasting report. The reason I highlight this here is just to emphasize the fact that report building inside the tool is not something that most folks are going to be doing on a month-to-month basis unless they're running different analysis. But any static reports like a forecasting report here, they can set it up one time. And in this case, we're looking at 3 months of actuals. and merging that with 9 months worth of budget. All the charts and graphs are linked to the data, obviously. So as things change and another month of actuals comes in, they're never having to redesign this report. You just bring the budget over a month and you'll see this period 4 update the minute we refresh the sheet. So month by month here, if they're looking at this forecast, they're just bringing the budget across, refreshing the sheet, and the whole report updates with all the charts and graphs updating as well. And the last part here is generally when folks are building these types of reports and they have things like forecasts in here, the last thing folks are looking to do is distribute that across the organization. Our tool also accommodates and assists with that. We have this distribution feature here where basically folks are able to enter in the email address of everyone that's going to receive this report. They'll decide during that distribution option there whether they receive the report either in Excel or PDF format. But the added kicker there basically is when the report is sent to their inbox and folks receive the report in their email, when it actually gets delivered there, it can be decided during that distribution feature which part of the organization that they see it for. So when it lands in John Smith for marketing's inbox, he's not going to see it for the whole organization. He just may see it from the marketing department. So that basically concludes today's demonstration. Wanted to highlight some of the main focal points, re-emphasize the fact that, again, there is no syntax, no coding. We are really trying to be a finance tool designed for finance people. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. It looks like at this time we're ready for the question and answer session, Mike, and I'm not sure if you want to take things back over.
Yeah, no, we definitely appreciate that, Lee and David. Just wanted to thank you guys for the presentation. Very insightful for sure of the content, and thank you for our attendees for taking the time to join us. Before we start that Q&A that David was mentioning, I wanted to let you know that any questions that are not addressed during the Q&A and specific questions that you have pertaining to pricing or your business may be sent to your CAM or by emailing camteam@swktech.com. Again, that's spelled out CAMTEAM@swktech.com with no spaces. And you can also get a recording sent to you a few days after the webinar is completed. We are also pleased to announce that SWK can provide financing for Budget Maestro or any of the ISV software solutions we offer. That includes software, implementation services, and maintenance. Coming up, you will see a survey asking if you would like to be contacted right away or at some point in the future. If you'd like to take a closer look at Budget Maestro or our financing options, select Contact Me right away and we will give you a call. With that being said, we'll turn it back to Lee and David.
Thanks very much. So I'd say at this time, if you do have a question, please submit it, and Lee and I would be happy to answer it. We thank everybody for taking the time to join us today, and we encourage you to come out to our website for a lot of case studies and videos that talk about how folks like you have used Budget Maestro successfully with Sage.
I think we actually have a few questions in here, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
So as far as first one we have here is how far out can you plan with Budget Maestro?
Yep. So Budget Maestro goes out that consolidated 60 years. So up to 60 years. However, that does take into account some of the history. So again, if you brought in 5 years of history, you could budget up to 55 years in advance.
Perfect. All right, looks like we have a couple more here. How long does it typically take to get up and running with Budget Maestro?
Typically, we see folks anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks. Again, most of the heavy lifting is done on our side in terms of setting things up and loading your infrastructure onto our tool. We have seen things go a little bit quicker than that, but 6 to 8 weeks would be a typical implementation time.
And that would include training, correctly?
Yes, training also, absolutely.
Perfect. I think we have one more here. Which Sage General Ledgers are Budget Maestro compatible with? Sage 100, 300, or 500? Just trying to get a sense there.
Yep, Budget Maestro and beyond Sage, we're actually able to integrate with any system, so any general ledger. So it really doesn't matter right now. And again, we go beyond the Sage products as well.
True, but I'd say for our audience here, we definitely have a connector for 100, 300, and 500.
Perfect. I think that was all the questions that we had here. We thank everyone again for attending and look out for next month's webinar.
Thanks very much. We appreciate the opportunity.